Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. We're in the middle of the sugya about the discussion about whether there's machlokes Tanoim. The Tanoim, different Tanoim argue against each other. How do we paskin? What are the klole psak halacha? What are the rules when we have a machlokes, and at this point we're assuming whether it's a Mishnah or a Brisa, and we have different Tanoim? Who do we paskin like? The Mora attempted before to prove that we do not hold of these klom, that these principles are not correct because we see that we don't apply these klom. The Gemara is now going to prove from the following case, or attempt to prove from the following case, again, that these principles are not correct. Elamahadasnan, we learn it from the following Mishnah. It says in the Mishnah, Menichas, base of a person left his house. So he was in a chotzer, he had a house, he shared a courtyard with other people. Now, as we know, in order to carry from Shabbos to the house and the chotzer, it's only permitted if there's Eruv chatzeres. If one of the members of the chotzer does not join in the Eruv, it's not an Eruv, and nobody can carry. So now if a person abandoned his house, he left his house, and he went to spend Shabbos in another town. So he was not mishtatev in the Eruv chatzeres within his house, in the chotzer that's in his house. He left his house that Shabbos to go to another city. And he did not make an Eruv with the members of the chotzer in his own city, in his own house. So therefore, the members of their chotzer are left with one of the houses that did not join the Eruv. Whether the person was a Nocher Yisrael, he answers on the other members and they can't carry. There's no Eruv. Divrei Reb Meir. That's what Reb Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he doesn't answer because since he left town, he's not considered to be dwelling in this place here. He's not considered to be a member, a resident of the chotzer, so he doesn't answer on them. Rabbi Yasi says, Nochri Eiser. If the person is a Nochri, then he would ask Yisrael ain't Eiser. But Yisrael does not answer. Why is that? What's the chiluk? A Nochri could come, and it's not uncommon for him to return from the other city on Shabbos. So therefore, he's not considered to have left his house. He's not considered to have abandoned the chotzer. But a Yisrael is not there chalav Shabbos. If he went Shabbos in another city, he's not likely to return to his house over here. So he is considered to be have abandoned his house. He's not considered to be a member of this chotzer, and therefore he does not answer on them. Rabbi Shimon says, he says, even if he's in the same city, even if he goes to his daughter in the same city, but still he left his house, because he already is Masechet Data, he abandoned thoughts of being here in this house for Shabbos, so he's not considered to be a member of this chotzer, so he does not answer. And he says the halacha is like Rosh Shimon. Now, man Poligale, who was the bar plucked over here of Shimon, who argues with the Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda. Now, according to the principles of the Kolomim that we mentioned before, if there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. And you see over here that we don't follow these principles, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon. Practically Gemara, my kusha, what's the kasha? What's the rai over here that the klal is not valid? Maybe then over here this is an exception. Where we see that there's an exception to the klal, there's an exception, but if it's not said beferish explicitly, something to the contrary, then perhaps we do apply these rules, these klalim. So you don't have a kash on that. Ella, the Gemara says, let's bring a catch from the following Snan. We learned in the Mishnah, this is what they said, the Chum said, that a poor person can make an Eruv without putting down pas. If he is in a certain place, if that's where his place is on the onset of Shabbos, he has a tchum from where he is. If he's a poor person, we don't require him to put down mozon shtei sudas, to put down pas. Rabbi Meir Omer, he says, Ein lanu ela ani. He says this exception is only for an ani. Otherwise, you do require pas. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says no, echad ani ve'echad oshi. He said in both cases, there's no requirement for a pas. It's only if you're not physically present in the location. But if one is presently in the location, he's physically present, even if he's an osher, he's kind of the shisa in that place. Lo yomru marvin bepas. They didn't say that you need pas, the requirement for pas. Why was that? It's only to make it easier for the osher. So he's not required to personally go out and be present at the place of the Erev, the place of the shisa. He can therefore send a shaliach with pas, and he can be marv on his behalf. But it was made as a kula, not as an absolute requirement. So therefore he says, whether it's an oni or asher, they both can be mahar baraglu. And he taught in front of Rav's presence, echad oni ve'echad asher. He said both of them can be mahar baraglu. Omelei Rav, sim ben nami halachek Rav Yehuda. And he says, conclude that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda. So what do you see over here? We see over here that we have this machlekes, it's Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, and its halacha is like Rav Yehuda. Now, according to the principle, the klal that we had, that is the klal. Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda is like Rav Yehuda. So why does Rav have to make a point of telling me that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda? I would know it from the klal itself, from that klal. I would know that that's the case. So by the fact that Rav has to point out that the halacha in this case is like Rav Yehuda, doesn't that show you that we don't adopt this principle and we don't say, generally speaking, that the rule is Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda halacha like Rav Yehuda? So Tati Lamali, why do I need both the general rule and this statement of Rav? V'am Rav Meir Rav Yehuda halacha like Rav Yehuda? So doesn't that show you that we don't adopt this klal? More my kusha, what's the kasha? Delma Rav las leilahani klal. Yes, you have demonstrated that Rav doesn't hold to the klal. Because if Rav held to the klal, he would not have to point out that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda. But who says that we don't adopt the klal, that the klal is not valid? Rav doesn't hold of it. But maybe we do. We do hold of it. Maybe it is valid. Ella, the Gemara says, let's bring a riot from the following. This nan, Hayavoma, she can't have chalitza or yibum unless there's 3 months of havchana, there's 3 months that have gone by after her husband has died. A woman whose husband dies and childless, so she's subject to either yibum, the deceased brother is either miyavam her, and marries her, or she performs chalitza. However, after the death, you have to wait for 3 months because she might be pregnant. And if she is pregnant, then she doesn't fall to yibum, and she cannot be married, she cannot be with the deceased brother, and the chalitza is not valid. So you have to wait 3 months. V'chein shar kol nashim, and other also women who were married, lo yinasu v'lo yisarsu, that they cannot get married again, or they can't have Nesuin or even Erisin, they have to wait 3 months after their previous marriage, because we have to know that that she was not pregnant from the previous marriage, because otherwise we won't know who the father is. So we have to wait 3 months of Havchana. Whether this applies to whether this woman is a Basula or whether she's a Ba'ula. In either case, that it applies, and we don't make an exception, and we say that even if she is whether a bula or a basula, so even if she never had relations with her previous husband, or even if she never had nesuin with the previous husband, so theoretically you'd say, well, she is therefore not pregnant from the previous husband, and there should be no reason. We make a loy plug. Whether this woman was an almana from her previous husband, or she was a grusha, whether she had nesuin or erison to the previous husband, it doesn't make a difference. In all of these cases, there's a loy plug, and we say that we don't differentiate. And whether she had nesuin to the previous husband and it's a question of nisuin to this husband. So there's a valid concern that she might be pregnant, and we would not know if she has a child from the second husband who the father is, or whether even theoretically that there is no concern. Let's say she was only an arusa to the previous husband, and she's now only becoming an arusa to the second husband. So she didn't have relations not with the first man and not with the second man. So theoretically, you would say there's no chashash. She's certainly not pregnant. Nevertheless, it's a lay plug. She can't have any form of marriage to another man unless there's a 3-month separation. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says no. Nesua isisars. If she was previously had nesuin, she was in a nesua, meaning, and therefore she had relations with the first man, she can't have nesuin to the second man because then you have this problem. But she could have erison where there are no relations to the second man, it's only erison. And if she was arusa from the first husband, so therefore she didn't have relations with the first man, so she can have nesuin to the second man. Arusa should be Yehuda, except for Arusa and Yehuda, because in Yehuda they used to have yichud in the time period of Eris, and they had yichud. They were alone together, so there's a possibility that even though it was only Eris and non Nesuin, there could have been relations over there, and therefore we have that chashash. But otherwise, a nesua, if she was nesua to the first husband, she can have erison to the second. Rabbi Yossi says, Kol hanashim yisarsin. He says all the women can have erison. If the second marriage is only erison, so there's no concern because she will not become pregnant from the second man, so we don't have this concern. Chutz min almona bnei ibul, with the exception of almona, then she can't have erison because of a separate consideration because of avelus. She has to be knowing her period of avelus. But once her shloshim of avelus is passed, then she can. So Rashi explains, how does he argue? Rav Yossi says, Kol hanoshim yisarsu. They can only have erison, but they can't have nesuin. And therefore, even if the first marriage was only an erison, so you might say, well, we don't have a concern from the first marriage that she was pregnant. Nevertheless, Rav Yossi says the second marriage can only be erison. She cannot have nesuin, even if the first marriage was only erison. And over there, Rav Yehuda is mater in that case. He would answer in this case. Now, the Tanakama answers in all cases. He answers even erison. So Rav Yossi is a third sheet. Vamrin, we say, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Lezer, like all the Beit Midrash, he did not go into the base medrash. Ashchal Rabasi Dahavakalayim. He saw that Rabasi was there. Omer Le, he said to him, My Omer Beit Midrash. What do they say in the base medrash today? Omer La, Omer Le, he said, Hachi Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. He said the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. That's the halacha. So Michlal Dichido Polygolet. So this implies that the one that argues is a Yochid, not a Rabbim. Because if the Tanakama would be the Rabbim, then he would not have Paschal Rav Yossi. So he says, yeah. He says, yes, that's the case. In Vatanya, we learned that the Tanakama must be, we see from here that the Tanakama must be a Yochid, not a Rabbin. Vatanya, we learned, if a woman used to go back to her parents' home. She went back to her father's home. And she was separated from her husband for a period of time. Or there was an argument with her husband, and therefore they were separated. So in both of these cases, she was separated from a husband for a 3-month period. Or the husband was old or sick. Or if she was sick, or a car as a kano katana, or she was in a car, or old, or underage, or the islandess, or she was an islandess, a person, a woman that is incapable of having children, or she in a royal leleid, or she is incapable of giving birth for any other reason, meaning either she is a islandess, a person she's never going to mature. So the case of Akara, she's a mature woman, she just can't have children. She's eyeless, means she's never really maturing physically. Or she is in a royal leled because that maybe she took something, some sort of contraceptive or something of that nature. Or her husband was locked in jail. So in all of these cases, So in all of these cases, you know that she did not have relations with her, either did not have relations with her husband or could not have been pregnant from her husband. If she miscarried after her husband died, or in such a case also where she was capable of having children, and she conceived from her husband, but after he died, she miscarried. So she miscarried after he died, so therefore, you know now that at this point, she's not pregnant from her first husband. So in all these cases, theoretically, there's no reason why she can't get married immediately. There's no reason why she would need a period of avchana. And nevertheless, in all of these cases, she still has to wait the 3-month period. She needs the period of avchana. It's a loiplug, diver amer. So that is the shita, the Tanakama that we learned previously. And it says over here in this brisa that that's the opinion of Rav Meir. So you see over here that the Tanakama is a yachid, not a Rav, is Rav Meir. Rav Yosi matir le'aras miyad. Rav Yosi says in these cases, there's no concern that she was pregnant from the first husband. She can get married immediately. So we see that's a machlokes Rav Meir, Rav Yosi, and nevertheless, he paskin that the halach is like Rav Yosi. So normally, why does Rav Yochanan have to tell me that the halach is like Rav Yosi? V'amrad, according to the rules that we had, Rav Meir, Rav Yosi, halachik Rav Yosi. We know that from the Klalim anyway. So therefore, you see, it's unnecessary. Why did he have to mention? Doesn't that show you that we don't adopt these rules? Mar says, my kusha, what's the kasha? Maybe the reason Rabbi Yochanan had to tell us explicitly that the law is like Rav Yosi is to show us not to exclude the opinion of Nachman bar Shmuel that says, that says when there's a machlokes and it's a gzeira, it's a question of a gzeira, we paskin like Rav Meir. Now, according to him, the principle is that if it's a question of a gzeira, we would paskin like Rav Meir. So maybe Rabbi Yochanan wants to exclude this opinion and say no, even though here it's a gzeira and it's a machlokes Rav Meir, Rav Yosi, nevertheless, Allah is like Rav Yosi. Ella, the Gemara says, from the following, the Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Holchim leYerid shel Nochim. Now you're allowed to go to the Yerid, to the marketplace of Nochim. Now, generally speaking, the Gemara says, the Mishnah says that you can't do business with the Goyim by the period of time when they have their Chaga, when they have their holidays for their Avodah Zarah, because if you do, he might come to be moida to his Avodah Zarah. So generally speaking, it's also to do business. But nevertheless, Holchim liYerid shel Nochim, you can go to the marketplace of the Nochim, these types of things you can purchase there. You can buy from them behema and avodim, and all these things. The avodim is because you're going to be machnas them. It's a mix of geiras, kanfei shchina, the houses, etc., the properties. You're either because you're going to be elevating them to a higher madrega, or because you're going to be machzik Yedei Yisrael and not Yedei Ovdei Kachavim. And you can even record these transactions in their courts. And normally you wouldn't want to do things in their courts. They might come to be mighty to their Avodah Zarah, swear in the name of the Avodah Zarah. But here you can, because it's considered like you're saving it from their hands. Right? Because otherwise, and if you don't record it in the documents in their courts, you won't have a record and you might lose it. Therefore, it's considered to be matzel, to saving them. And if a person was a kayin, he can even go to Chutz La'aretz. Now, even though the Rabban were Geyser Tumal Eretz Ha'amim, they gave it a din of their machmer to treat it as a place of Tomei. So if one goes to Chutz La'aretz, he's considered Tomei. A kohen is normally not allowed to go to Chutz La'aretz, but over here we allow him. This is only a din to Rabbanan. We allow him to go outside of Eretz Yisrael to lodin v'laramem, to sue them, to argue with them, to litigate with them. because he's allowed to do it because it's masal miyodim. Just like he's allowed to be metam to go to chutz la'aretz, kach metama b'beis hakvaros. He can also go into a beis hakvaros. Frank the Gemara, what do you mean? How can a kohen go into the beis hakvaros even though they have this important reason? But now, how can still, nevertheless, how can he go into beis hakvaros? Beis hakvaros, hakabaytach. Do you think it means a beis hakvaros? Tuma d'oraisa. It's also mid'oraisa min Torah to go into a beis hakvaros for a kohen. Elo, the Gemara says, it doesn't mean a basic horse mamish. It means el beves hapras derabon. It means a base of pras. If you have a field that there was a kever and it was plowed and were chayshish, that bones got scattered throughout the whole field, the rabbanon were guys there for a certain distance that you are not allowed to go into this field. That's an isur derabbanon. For this purpose, the kohen is allowed to go there. Umetama lisa yishav alil matayr. And he also can go to chutz la'aretz or a beis of pras if it's for the purpose. This is also considered to be a valid choshev purpose that would allow him to violate this, to lisa isha, to marry a woman of a little matayra. So he's allowed to go to chutz la'aretz if it means finding a wife there, marrying a wife, or to learn there, to go to yeshiva there, to go to a rebbe there. When do we say he's allowed, the Talmud Chacham is allowed to go to learn Torah in Chutz La'aretz, Bizman she'ein moitzel ilma? That's only where, if he can't find a place to learn in Eretz Yisrael, then we allow him to go to Chutz La'aretz. But if you can find a Rebbe where in Eretz Yisrael, you cannot go to Chutz La'aretz. Even though he might have a preference to go there, but if he has a Rebbe over here, we don't allow him to go to Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Yossi, he says, no. He says, even if he has a Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael, if he has a preference to learn in Chutz La'aretz, he's allowed to go and to be metama. He can also have lefi because she'ein min hakol, because ein min hakol azoich haram lilmad. Because even if there is a Rebbe here, but a person not zeicha to learn from any Rebbe. So it has to be, if he has a preference for a certain Rebbe, then he might have greater hatzlacha in his learning there. That's a valid reason to allow him to go to Chutz La'aretz. V'am Rav Yosi, he says, Ma'is Rabbi Yosef a kohen. He was a kohen. Shalach eitzel Rabba l'tzaidan l'ilmad Torah. And he went to Chutz La'aretz, l'tzaidan, to learn Torah, even though there were other Rebbeim in Eretz Yisrael. V'am Rav Yochanan halach Rav Yosi. And he said, Rav Yochanan said, the halacha is like Rav Yosi. Why does he have to tell me that? This is a machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Yosi. And according to the klalim, according to the principles we have, we would pass on like Rav Yosi anyway. We didn't know that halacha is like Rav Yosi. So by the fact that he tells me this, doesn't that show us that we don't adopt these klalim? Amar Abai, he says, no, not necessarily. He has to tell me that because I might have thought, when do we apply these colonies principles? That's only in a Mishnah. But if it's a machlokes that's found in a brisa, I might have thought that these principles don't apply. Therefore, he has to point it out and he has to tell me explicitly that no, it does apply. And even though it's a machlokes on a brisa, it looks like Rav Yosi. So we have no proof that these klolim are not valid. This is what he meant to say. It's not that we don't apply, we don't accept these klolim. It's not that these klolim are not valid. It's not that they're not correct. Rather, what he meant to say is that they are not universally accepted. They're not accepted by everybody. We have no proof that we don't accept them, but we do have a proof that it's not universally accepted. That he went to say is, it's not accepted by everyone. Because we saw before that Rav doesn't hold to these klalim. Because Rav had to tell us explicitly that Allah is Rabbi Yehuda. Now, according to the klalim that we have, we know a machlek is Rabbi Yehuda or Mer Rabbi Yehuda is Allah Rabbi Yehuda. Why did he have to tell us that Allah is Rabbi Yehuda? It must be that Rav did not hold to those klalim. So that's what he meant to say. Rav doesn't hold of it, but others perhaps do.